everyone, it's Angela from Cloudfetti, and today I'm sharing all of my most used tools when working with polymer clay, in particular making charms and figurines, and I'll also go over what I use each thing for. So to start out, my most used tool ever is polymer clay. I like using Fimo Soft, Sculpey Primo, and Sculpey 3, mostly for the colours and availability and strength. And I like to mix and match all the clay brands to create little charms. Next is what I work on, and that's a big glass shelf insert. It's from IKEA from their Kallax range, and under it is a piece of MDF wood, which I covered in wood grain vinyl. It's really big and non-stick, which is great. I also like working on a glass tile, and I got this one from Bunnings, which is the hardware store in Australia. It's a little version of a work surface, which is nice and portable. Then there's some hand moisturizer. I didn't use this in earlier videos until I realised that polymer clay makes my hands really dry. So now I use this all the time to soften my skin, especially on camera. And then to roll the clay, I use an acrylic roller, and I combine that with popsicle sticks for depth guides. So I just tape stacks together of various heights, which will help roll the clay to different thicknesses. And these are great to use in a pinch instead of getting out a big pasta machine. I do use a pasta machine to condition large amounts of clay, and I just use this for charms in my online shop because it's a lot quicker and easier than trying to condition by hand. Next, you'll see me using cutters all the time, and whether they're metal or plastic, they're really helpful to cut out shapes from polymer clay. I find that a long blade is perfect for removing clay off my glass work surface. Removing excess clay from molds. And cutting edges of strips of flat snakes of clay. I like using a craft knife because I can hold it like a pencil, and this just makes cutting small things so easy, like excess clay. Cutting clay into small pieces. Cutting canes. And also scraping chalk pastels. Next, I always use a flat metal lid. This really helps me a lot to rotate clay without actually touching it and smushing it too much. I love using it because it's small enough to hold my charm designs, and I can tilt it all different directions to get the right angle to work with. Next up, I like using this tool, which is actually 2 in 1. On one side, there's a dotting tool, and it comes in all different sizes. They're really good for poking eye holes when making faces. And also texturing pieces by sort of pouncing the tool over clay. On the other side is a silicone brush, and it's nice and flexible. They come in all sorts of different shapes too. I use them for blending clay. And it's also really helpful for picking up clay pieces, especially when attaching parts for faces. Then I also like this tool, which is another 2 in 1. One side is a needle tool, and it's like a sewing needle with a handle. It's great for creating indents in clay. Or smoothing pieces together. And also applying liquid clay. The other side is a flat spatula, and it's great for mixing liquid clay. And scooping into paint pots too. I like using a variety of paint brushes, especially for shading colours onto polymer clay. And applying liquids like UV resin. And of course, painting. To colour polymer clay, I mostly use chalk pastels, and I make my own shades, especially for pastries. And I also scrape it into liquid clay to make sauces. or adding shading. A toothbrush is really great for adding texture to polymer clay. And I just dab it over the surface. I then use a ball tool, which is basically a huge dotting tool. It's really great for making clay concave like a bowl. And also flattening clay with a lip on the edge. Next, I use Bake & Bond, and this is great for adhering pieces together and then baking them to secure them. I also use it to secure pin backings to pins or brooches. I also use it mixed with polymer clay to create thick frosting or icing. Then, a little cheap toothpick is perfect for mixing resin. Adding to clay designs. And also helping to secure and twist little curls for designs as well. Next, I use a few molds, some that I've made myself and some which are for UV resin. They're awesome for creating fun designs in a pinch, like with this seashell mold. And for saving time, like creating these cupcake bases for shop charms. I also love adding on fun embellishments or accessories to decorate pieces, like pieces of this strawberry cane to create a shortcake. I then use some jump rings and mostly use them for attaching charms to other pieces, like this spider and web. Next up is a little plain piece of paper or card. It's really helpful for rolling thin clay snakes. Printing or drawing templates to cut clay with. And placing clay on top of to leach the excess oils out of. Then, eye pins are fantastic for attaching to pieces to create charms. And cut into smaller pieces for designs. To cut the eye pins shorter, I use pliers. These have a cutting edge and they can cut through the metal wire. They can also bend wire as well. And they're also useful for opening jump rings. I also like using cornstarch or corn flour for dipping narrow clay cutters into, so that it helps to remove the stickiness from polymer clay. And also to bake awkwardly shaped clay pieces on, so that they can keep their shape and don't become flat. I use nail polish remover combined with a Q-tip or cotton tip to clean any colour transfer and dust off of raw clay and baked clay. Next, I use baby oil to clean any cornstarch marks off of baked clay. and as the liquid part of shaker designs. Next, of course, then there's my oven, which I use to bake polymer clay in. Next up, I use super glue for securing eye pins for charms in my personal collection. Next, baking paper is really useful for baking clay on. Keeping my work surface clean when glazing charms. Or mixing liquid clay with chalk pastels. I also really like using glass bottles in my work, and I'll use these as fun and different figurines like potion bottles. Next, I use UV resin, and this is great for adding a glossy coat to charms. Securing the eye pins for my shop charms. And pouring into bottle designs. And to cure the UV resin, I'll either use a UV lamp or direct sunlight. When working with UV resin, I'll always use safety gear like a respirator and goggles just to protect from any fumes since it is a chemical. And lastly, I always use gloves to protect my hands, especially when conditioning clay off camera. Pouring UV resin. Or even glazing charms. So those are all the tools that I use for creating charms and figurines with polymer clay. Of course, you don't need to have all of these. You can look for items around the house, or make your own tools, like baking a clay handle on a sewing needle to turn it into a needle tool. You can also ask family and friends for tools, or check dollar and craft stores for bargains, especially in the baking section. To save more money, you can also use discount codes and coupons, and look online for secondhand items. Mostly, just look around and see what you can find, because the possibilities really are endless. And that's all for this tutorial. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up and subscribe for more. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!